Well, let me jump in then and ask you this, because you make this book so personally. I mean, you disassemble yourself a little bit as you're doing this, your family and everything else, as you look at these issues, the whole tribes chapter, as you're looking at it all. How did you come to the conclusion that that belonged in this book? Because it makes it so much more personal than other war correspondence accounts that I've read.
So I think that as I was processing Mosul, even in Mosul, or even while I was in Iraq, I began to realize that, and it wasn't necessarily my first war zone, I think it was just the most expansive one that I had been in. And I was realizing how much I already knew, just on an emotional level. And I didn't feel like there was any other way I could tell it. You're right. I've read a lot of other war correspondent books and memoirs, and they're good and they're fascinating and they're incredible storytellers. But I think that because I felt like, for me, I didn't come into the journalism field in being inspired by journalists. I came into the journalism field being inspired by playwrights and music and film and fictional storytellers, and wanting to take the elements of that into my own life. In the first chapter, I refer to a man who named by the name of John, who had actually been my youth pastor, and when I got a little bit older, he was a mentor. And he was the very first person that I told that I wanted to be a war correspondent. And I was 19 years old, and he said yes. Like, there's a lot of other crazy things I could have said that I wanted to do with my life, but it was that one. And he didn't tell me no. And it was the first time somebody in my life, a mentor in my life, was like, okay, let's figure out how we get you there. And I think that set the course for just how I see the world, how I view the world, and even how I view the war zone. I was influenced a lot by, I mentioned in the book several times, I was influenced a lot by MASH and syndication, which is one of the most human shows that talks about war ever. Alan Alda did an incredible job scripting that show and participating in that show. And I think those influences influenced me. And so I think writing a book, writing a piece that reflected the way that, we can all tell war stories, but each person can only tell it the way they can tell it. The only way that I can tell it is to take you into the world that influenced me to get there in the first place. Jim, you're going to write it in a way that's going to be only the way that you can tell it.
My stories keep getting better the older I get.
Exactly. And no, Matt that's and Don, and you know what I mean?
That's
the
one
only
of the things,
way I could tell it was that way.
One of the things that I really appreciated in your book was the fact that you didn't lean into that the way that so many others had. I mean, look, we all know there are some correspondents out there. It's no joke. They write lines like, I stepped around the corner, the stench of cordite hung in the air, and then I heard the rat-a-tat-tat and saw the baklava-clad gunman firing straight at me. I ducked and covered and into a ditch, and I rolled into the alley. And I approached him, and, I'm reading this, and I said, hey, excuse me, I was with you all day long. This never effing happened. Literary license. I mean, some people use war as a way to go off on their own. They like to work on their own because they see stuff that the rest of the journalists never see. And then you start getting rockets from Atlanta, New York, wherever, London, wherever your base of operations is, and you have to compete with these people. And they're just making it up whole cloth. And this book doesn't make it up. I mean, there's such a sense of realism to it, the way that you unfold it. And I appreciated that. Your honesty.